Hello and a very warm welcome to our Weil Youth Research Dialogue. This is the second episode in 2026 and we conduct this series on a regular basis with the aim to discuss evidence-based research from Weil and beyond. My name is Karsten. I'm the Weil Network Manager for the European Youth Research Network Weil, which is hosted by the Finnish National Agency for Education. The Weil Network involves 36 partners in 34 countries, and this includes national agencies responsible for the European youth programs and national WhatsApp chapters. Today's episode takes place during the European Youth Week, which is organized by the European Commission every second year. The aim of the Youth Week is to celebrate and promote youth engagement, participation, and active citizenship all over Europe and beyond. Furthermore, this year we celebrate also 30 years of EU youth volunteering, and today's episode is dedicated to this topic. We will bring data and voices of change from 30 years of EU youth volunteering in the past. The heart of Weil's research activities are the so-called monitoring surveys, which has been conducted since 2009. Weil is surveying beneficiaries, meaning young people, volunteers, youth workers, organizations, project team members, and so on, who are involved in European youth programs. And of course, we are covering also the European Solidarity Corps since it came into existence. Weil has been surveying volunteers and related activities also before that to the respective program formats which existed by then. We will bring fresh data with us from our latest survey round conducted last year. During the discussions today, we will take a closer look at the history, the impact, the challenges, learnings, but as well as also future needs of volunteering activities in the context of the European youth programs. We will dive deeper into changes and challenges over time. We will talk about impact and effects of volunteering on individual, community, and society levels. Furthermore, we will discuss also implications for policy and practice and needs for youth volunteering, including recognition, as well as requirements for the next generation of the European youth programs. As I already said, Weil will bring the latest data to this dialogue, and Andreas Karsten is here on behalf of the Weil Transnational Research Team. He is coordinating the Weil Transnational Research Team and is working for Youth Policy Lab, a small research agency and think tank in the youth sector. It's based in Berlin. The team there is an international team of participatory research, public policy, and open data aficionados. We are also very grateful to have two colleagues from the SALTO European Solidarity Corps Resource Center with us today. Our guest speakers are Weil and Eglitis. Christina's professional path has been closely linked to volunteering with a strong focus on volunteering schemes and local engagement. She has been involved in the Red Cross, where she worked on strengthening the role of non-formal education and youth work within the Youth Red Cross. In 2017, she became one of the first officers for the European Solidarity Corps program, and she contributed to the establishment of the SALTO Resource Center for the European Solidarity Corps in 2018. Our second guest speaker, Barbara, built her professional path around volunteering and solidarity. She volunteered herself, starting at the age of 16 and founded, for example, a local youth culture club, and she also volunteered abroad. Furthermore, she also mentored volunteers. She worked in an organization which specialized on sending and receiving volunteers with disability worldwide. She is strongly committed to contribute to an inclusive, fair, and equal society by strengthening volunteering. And in the SALTO Resource Center, she focuses on supporting the quality implementation and quality assurance of the program. We have been happy both of us today here. Welcome, and we're looking forward And last but not least, our team today is Domi Kielakowski, our moderator, and Omar Modic, our DG facilitator. And yeah, that's from me. Have an inspiring dialogue.
Hello, my name is Tomi Kielakowski, and I will be your moderator today. And today, like Carmen said, today we will talk about 30 years of European volunteering through a hero story. Hero story is a synthesis of how growth happens. Based on analyzing myths, a person called Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And in the book, he proposed a framework for how a person learns and transforms. It's regularly used as a basis for movies or TV scripts. To put it bluntly, it depicts a learning process. In our dialogue, we will examine the journey of EU youth volunteering, examine what obstacles and learning outcomes have emerged, and analyze the relationships of volunteering. Before we dive into the discussion, I would like to remind the audience about the great possibility to join our dialogue. We invite you to ask questions either on Facebook or YouTube or via Slido. Simply go to slido.com and type in the code which is displayed now on the screen. Right. We'll start our dialogue. The first phase of Hero's journey is called Leaving the Ordinary World. There's a call for adventure and the need for something new. So first question goes to Barbara. When developing this system, there was a social call for development of EU youth volunteering. The more organized form of volunteering was needed. Why and when did European Voluntary Service, EVS, emerge? So tell us a bit about the history of EU youth volunteering, especially concentrating in the beginnings.
Yeah, thank you. We also brought a bit a visual on that. Of course, EVS was rooted in something bigger, and European volunteering as such, like cross-border volunteering, started much earlier, basically after the First World War, when there was already a need and the idea that when young people meet, live in a different place and get to know to culture and people, it will contribute to a more peaceful, more understanding and solidarity society. So it was already quite early. I mean, you can imagine that in these times, now we have internet and it's easy to book a flight. It was a bit more tricky. The second big wave where international volunteering in Europe became important was after the Second World War. In that time, the first networks started and cross-border volunteering became a bit more structural. So the two world wars were the, let's say, the bigger boosts for volunteering. And the idea was always the same, to connect people, to foster understanding, so that after crisis and conflict, people could have friendly relationships. Maybe we move a bit forward to the 1990s, because that's the time when the EVS pilot started. If we look at what happened in these years, in the early 1990s, it marked a big change in Europe. It was the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the war in Yugoslavia, and it was the birth of the European Union as we know it now. A lot of countries also transitioned from communism to democracy, like Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia. That was the time. And after that, the EVS pilot started. Only 200 volunteers went on an adventure. At that time, it was young people aged from 18 to 25, volunteering either 6 or 12 months abroad. We have talked to some of the organizations who were part of this journey, and they really shared that it was super adventurous. The contracts were only 2 pages long, and everything was built on trust mainly. But because it was such a big success, Edith Cresson, a member of the European Commission, at that time responsible for education, training and youth, turned that pilot into a program, like a true program, and it was integrated in the Youth in Action program and became appropriate legal and financial framework at that time. And that's how it all started until now. The European Solidarity Corps was a bit also a reaction on Brexit, where solidarity was, of course, embedded from the beginning, but became then a stronger emphasis. And the European Solidarity Corps had a stronger also focus on community, so less on learning, but more on being integrated in a community. And here we are now.
Thank you. Barbara mentioned solidarity, which is still one of the building blocks of the whole program. Christine, what are the other building blocks of the program that are still valid?
Well, hello, warm welcome also from my side, and I'm really happy to join this discussion online today. Yeah, as you already said, Tommy, solidarity has been there from the very beginning. It was about creating the common good with the community, and it was already an essential building block. Barbara and I, we had a short look at the aims of the ABS pilot, and you see it on the screen right now. And it's really interesting how, I would say, even visionary and also long-lasting the ideas back then already were, because these are already also the building blocks that actually we still see until today. So we already said we have this solidarity context. We also already have the learning dimension embedded even in the EVS pilot already, especially when it comes to this non-formal learning perspective. And also it was already focusing on the idea of the validation of skills gained through volunteering. And it's quite interesting because this balance of those two, solidarity and the learning dimension, has been there from the beginning, and it shifted a bit depending on the strategies and the focus and the geopolitical developments. It shifted a bit towards more learning dimension, more important in the EU programs. And then now with the Solidarity Corps coming back to solidarity, and we will see how it develops in the next program period when it comes now this union of skills and the new priorities are getting more important. We'll see how this balance will develop further. Other components and priorities that have been from the beginning, the cooperation with partner regions. As Barbara already mentioned, it has had a lot, of course, to do with peace building, with sharing values, with building strong networks and partnerships across borders. And what's always has been there from the beginning and in different formats and facets has been this possibility of volunteering as individual, but also as a group of volunteers. And the main priority that has been there from the beginning is, of course, this inclusion aspect. It's always been in the center of the program of any kind, no matter how it was named, that the main target group should be those who otherwise could not afford to go abroad and volunteer in another country. So this inclusion aspect has been very strong from the very beginning. And then, of course, you can see it hasn't been stated that obvious, but still you can see that even the priorities that we talk about right now, like preparedness, the strengthening of society, the union of skills, it has been there from the very beginning, sometimes a bit more present, sometimes a bit less, but it's always a bit shifting, as I said, depending a bit on developments. Thank you, Tommy.
Yes, highly interesting. My next question goes to Andreas. Welcome back. We had a bit of technical issues, but Andreas is here and no harm done. Before we do that, just a quick reminder that, you, the audience, can ask questions. Please do so using Facebook, YouTube, or slido.com. And about the wonderful visuals we just saw, you can download them at SALTO website. But Andreas, talking about research, at a certain point, the RAY network launched the evaluation of volunteering activities. And as we heard from Karsten, especially the regularly conducted RAY monitoring service are taking a look at the impact of volunteering activities. What was expected from the research and what factors have been studied during the years?
So we, in our monitoring service, we study everything that comes to mind. We look at the objectives of the programs and whether projects contribute to fulfilling them. We look at the thematic priorities, which at the moment are, as we all know, participation, inclusion, digital transformation, sustainability, and how the projects deal with them and have them reflected. We look at the learning of the individual volunteers or volunteering teams. We look at the learning of the organization or networks that host them. We look at skills development and the contribution to professional and personal development of the volunteering projects. We look at things like European identity and how it's being strengthened or being changed, things like empathy and intercultural learning. So really a wide array of things, which everyone who has answered our surveys very kindly, and thank you to everyone who has done and will do so, they're not short. And that's because our interest is so varied in the impact and the quality of volunteering projects.
There's an audience comment, Barbara, which I will take now. It goes like this: can we have 2-page contracts back, pretty please? So what would be your answer to this quite often repeated demand?
We hope that our European Commission colleagues hear this and maybe make a change.
Yeah, wonderful. Keep the questions coming. We are happy to answer them. Well, that was the initial phase. We heard that, heard the beginnings, heard the history of volunteering, about the values that Europe wants to hold, and about the research. Next phase in Hero's journey is called initiation, and the hero has to go through transformations and revelations. So it's about challenges. So perhaps this goes to Christine. What are the challenges that the volunteering sector has faced, and have these challenges changed over time? And does policy find answers for these changes? And one last thing, this is a sort of a cluster of questions. Is there something that has been left on the way?
Okay, thanks for the question, Tommy. It's quite interesting because when I thought a bit about this question, I also had a look at the Council recommendation. There was already one in 2008 on the mobility of young volunteers across the European Union, and then there was, because I was involved in the process of the development of the new Council recommendation on the mobility of young volunteers across Europe, which was developed further in 2022. And there was a side product, which was a study on removing obstacles to cross-border solidarity activities. And one of the first statements within this paper was that there are quite some barriers to cross-border volunteering. And one of the first statements was that nothing from not a lot from the recommendations that had been following the first Council recommendation have been implemented. So more or less the same challenges that we already faced when the Council recommendation 2008 was published, we still face today. And I think it's in a way logic, because there are challenges that are coming with volunteering, but maybe just to name a few. We still have a very diverse and fragmented regulatory framework in member states. So even though most member states have some kind of legal acts or definition of volunteering and some kind of law on volunteering in place, but they differ significantly from each other. So it's really hard to talk about a legal status for volunteers. And of course, that hinders this free movement of volunteering. Connected to this, we have this ongoing challenge when it comes to visa and residence permits. It has been challenging from the beginning, but of course now with this political situation that we face, it's becoming more and more difficult, and the processes are really, really long-term processes, and it's harder for especially partner regions to get this visa application. And then when it comes to young people with few opportunities, which, as you all know, is the center of European youth volunteering, also this lack of a legal status is really challenging when it comes to social benefits. Lots of young people who have some kind of social support, like health insurance, unemployment, or disability benefits, they fear of losing this if they go to another country to volunteer. So since volunteer doesn't have a legal status, if they more or less leave their status they have at home in their home country and go to volunteer, they lose all the benefits that they have. So very often a decision is then against volunteering to keep the benefits that they need for the future life. Yes, and then again, I already mentioned it a bit, and I will come back to it later again. There's this lack of a unified national framework for the recognition of skills and competences that are required through volunteering. So very often it's just also not worth the effort for some people. There is currently we don't have a European policy frame, so there's nothing that people can relate to when it comes to volunteering. And we also discussed quite a lot that it would be fantastic to have a policy frame, let's call it for now volunteering and engagement. And this would really help to increase the legitimacy of volunteering, and it would increase the recognition and also the political weight of volunteering. And it would allow legal certainty for those who are involved in volunteering, so also for organizations and for everybody who is committed to European volunteering. And we all, I think most of us are really aware that volunteering is a very important indicator of thriving civil society. And nowadays we are facing a time with a shrinking space for youth work, for volunteering, for civil society as such. And I think volunteering is so much underestimated that it's a very important tool also for democracy. So this is also why, for example, a European youth program like the Solidarity Corps is so essential that it's still in place, because it does serve partially this need we have, because there's no bigger policy frame on volunteering. And it's important on different levels. And even in the programs, of course, we face challenges, and they also have accompanied us throughout the whole time when European youth volunteering exists. Especially when we talk about funding, it's of course always there's a bit more need for more funding for projects, but also, as it was already mentioned with the 2-page contract, the bureaucracy and the high administrative workload, it's just, it's overtaking so much of the work that should actually go into this whole work on local level. And it's a good thing, but also it's a bit challenging that the whole volunteering, the European program volunteering is getting more and more professionalized. So it's getting even harder for newcomers and for grassroots organizations to get into the system and to get funding. And one thing that I would really also like to underline is that very often organizations are a bit forgotten when we talk about European youth volunteering. We focus a lot on volunteers. We focus on the needs for volunteers. We focus on the support mechanisms for volunteers. And very often we don't talk about the organizations, but organizations are the ones that actually keep the whole system alive. And they are the ones applying for the projects. They are the ones implementing the projects. They are the ones supporting the volunteers. And this challenge of taking the organizations that are working in this field for granted maybe should also not be underestimated. And then when we think a bit about the future, what's really, really important, and this has been lost a bit with the Solidarity Corps, is this capacity building opportunities for organizations. I know there are systems or there are possibilities that still organizations can through Erasmus+, for example. But I think it's something that should really also point out that for the future, it's quite essential to bring back this specific of having capacity building possibilities for organizations when it comes to volunteering specifically.
Thank you, Christine. There's a really practical question about the visuals that Barbara showed. And the question goes like this. Do you have any additional visuals for the 50th anniversary that as a national agency could use for our events? So, it's a good thing. We are not the only ones celebrating 30 years of EU youth volunteering. So is there a way to get more visuals that can be
Yes,
used?
of course. We have this sticker, which you have seen already on the slide, which we are happy to share. We are also running a Facebook campaign, which you can reshare. And if you need something very specific, please write us an email if you're a national agency, but also if you are if you are a volunteering organization and you would like to make use of our materials, they are available, and you can reach us via solidarity@salto-youth.net. or you find us on our website, and you can really approach us, and we will reply to you and send you the visuals, the links, and packages we have.
And unfortunately, for technical reasons, we cannot show you the address, but we'll post it on Facebook and on YouTube. So please contact Barbara and Christine and other SALTO colleagues. And now, next question goes to Andreas. Christine mentioned that volunteering is a powerful tool for democracy, and that is certainly what has been believed for decades now. So, question to you, Andreas. Based on array research and other related research, what are the basic strengths of European volunteering activities? What do we actually achieve?
Such a good question. I mean, maybe, yeah, okay, you already see on the screen one example that I've brought as a visualization. So one question of many that we ask in our surveys is whether the relationship of volunteers and volunteering project participants changes, their relationship to Europe changes over time. And it's a slider question. Those of you who have answered our surveys know how they work. It's a slider from 0. I have been close to Europe before the project, not at all. And 10 is I have been close to Europe a lot or very much. And so we asked this question before the project and after the project and whether it has changed. And you see here the movement, it doesn't look like a lot, but it's statistically really quite significant and quite strong, from an average of 6 on this 11-point scale from 0 to 10 before projects to almost 8 after the project. And I really like this graph because it shows two things. It shows that volunteering projects really have an impact in lots of different ways, but now in this particular example on the relationship and on the sense of identity and sense of belonging of young volunteers to Europe. But also it shows that because we conduct our research independently and we are not the European Commission or the European Union asking, but we are the independent self-governed network of researchers and national agencies of the European youth programs, people answer honestly, right? Because if there would be a large bias involved, the scale would be much further up and closer to 10, and everybody would say afterwards, we feel, of course, very strongly connected to Europe. But what's hidden behind this graph is, of course, that volunteers as project participants in other projects struggle with the values of the European Union versus its current policies and how it's being implemented, and that their relationship to Europe is a tender one and a strong one, but also a critical one and a reflective one. And I really like that. But beyond that, volunteering does really what it's supposed to do. It fulfills the objectives that it has designed in the programs, whether it was EVS in Erasmus Plus Youth in Action previously, or now the volunteering projects in the Solidarity Corps. It oftentimes really changes the lives of young people. It sometimes also changes the course of organizations. Ideally, both of that happens in agreement and in adjustment, but there is a reason why very often people speak of magical moments, and I think it's maybe even more the stories of volunteers that tell the power of that experience than our numbers can. We can show with a lot of graphs and research that we have that volunteering projects are very good at doing what they are meant to do, bringing young people closer to Europe, helping organizations and young people experience, practice, and provide solidarity, helping societies change for the better, giving young people opportunities they would otherwise not have. So that's awesome. And yeah, but it's sort of, yeah, it's maybe the magic of the experience as the best description. That maybe I hope this graph lets you feel a little bit.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because one of the key goals is promoting European identity. There's a question for you, Andreas. It's an audience question. It's about EVS. So,
Yes.
was there a long-term impact study on EVS? I would be interested in this, as would many others as well. So, was there a long-term impact study on EVS specifically?
I would be very interested in this too. So there have been some national and regional impact studies on EVS. There has not been a European one for like across the entire cohort of volunteers over the 30 years, sadly. We are hoping to begin longitudinal impact studies on volunteering, and have done smaller studies in the past where we looked at project participants of Erasmus Plus, including volunteers, but not exclusive to volunteering, in our project on the long-term effects of participation in the European programs on citizenship and active participation in society. So I would say the answer is not to the scale that we hope, maybe. So there are a few bits and pieces, but it's certainly a puzzle that needs a lot more pieces and some more substantive longitudinal research.
Yeah, actually, we have two quite nice comments which we are showing on the screen. So amazing time when I remember back, a time with a catalog with the EVS projects, no internet, only fax machine. Now those were the days. But already at the time, the magic of volunteering and growing with it for young people, but also for all involved persons or organizations. And that's something we have talked about in RAY dialogues, individual and organizational learning. And fantastic work. Looking forward to finding out more about the findings. Yeah. So RAY web pages are certainly worth checking out. And also they have a lot of dialogues that have existed before. So there's a lot of information there. Now, moving on to the third phase of Hero's journey, it's returning and integrating the learning outcomes of the journey. Well, one of the things that we had to use what has been learned before was the COVID crisis, but it has been said more widely that we live in the age of polo crisis. So, how have the youth volunteering programs faced the crisis that they are experiencing in this time and age? And this one probably goes to Andreas and Barbara as well.
Andreas, would you like to go first, or do you want me to respond? What we see is also that volunteering is not only facing this crisis; they are part of the solution to crisis. When you think about whatever crisis, like an earthquake, COVID, or other refugees coming in, it's always the volunteers, no matter if it's in the European Solidarity Corps program or other programs, they are the first ones being in the front line, being there to respond, because the volunteering sector, driven by mainly civil society organizations, is highly agile. And volunteering is the answer to a lot of big crises. I think it's a great tool, and we could manage a lot of crises with volunteering, and it has also obvious effects. It's the cultural awareness, learning new languages, and we see that a lot of volunteers who went on international voluntary service bring that back. For instance, volunteer when refugees come and they speak the languages. They use what they have learned further on. So the volunteering does not stop with the end of the program. It continues. This empathy, you learn. A lot of volunteers, like I did, grow up during their volunteering service and see things differently. You feel what is needed, but you also feel needed, which fights loneliness, which is also a big health crisis, a global health crisis. And it's super effective when it comes to societal challenges. As I said, reducing loneliness, it strengthens democracy. As Andreas said before, there are a lot of studies also showing that people who volunteer also participate or have a higher likeliness to participate in elections and so on. So I think that volunteering is not just facing crisis, but they're really part of the whole solution to be a resilient society and resilient and prepared communities.
Yeah, I think that is a very good description, right? Rebuilding through volunteering also helps to rebuild people to an extent, and we ask for the first time now in our monitoring surveys a few questions around polycrisis, right? So we ask which of the crises of our time young people as well as youth workers and youth work organization team members are most impacted by, and to some extent also maybe most afraid of or most fearful of. We ask to which extent projects maybe help them to navigate the crisis of our time. And then also we do ask in which ways this help has come. And you see here one of these questions, again, a slider question from 0, the project helped me not at all to navigate the crisis of our time, to 10, it helped me very much to navigate the crisis of our time. And you see that most people are somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning more towards the stronger side of the answer. But again, one of the answers I really, really like because it shows such a nuanced picture and also clarifies, of course, immediately that not every project can solve these multiple crises of our time that we are facing, the effects of war, the effects of late-stage capitalism, in particular on young generations. That's nothing that volunteering can fix, but it can help young people and youth workers and youth sector professionals to navigate maybe through these times. And something that I really like about volunteering in particular, in comparison with the other project types, is that one of the ways in which it helps is it gives young people a way to act meaningfully in times of crisis. And we have, lots of questions or lots of aspects of this question in ways of helping. It helped me to understand the crisis better, to openly discuss the effect of the crisis on me and my context and my friends and my peers. It helped me to understand my options for action, but then also one aspect is it helped me to meaningfully act. And volunteering is one of the strongest project formats that we have in both European youth programs to help young people to meaningfully act in times of crisis, which I think is really, really cool.
Well, listening to you brought in my mind one of my favorite quotes. It's by Kurt Hahn, who was really good at doing adventure education. He has famously said that, best thing we can tell to a young person is this: you are needed, and that appeal hardly ever fails. Now, this is the power of volunteering. You are needed. And the problem, of course, has always been recognizing this power. So, Christine, how has the recognition of volunteering evolved? And is there something they still need to have to further improve recognition or maybe even validation of volunteering?
Thanks, Tommy. That's a really complicated question, I have to say. I think it would need more time to really talk about recognition, because what I learned in the recent weeks and months is that it's a super, super complicated topic. You really have to dive a bit into what we want to recognize with all the different schemes and possibilities and formats of volunteering. Then you need to look into by whom and what ways we want to we want recognition. What I just maybe in 2 sentences, what I will try to say is that it's really important to tackle recognition on different levels. So on societal level, to really make people understand for themselves that how important volunteering is. Also the families, you have countries, regions with a not such a strong history of volunteering, but it's, as you can see in this quote that is shared now, where even young people see it as a waste of time when they look at their employment path to volunteer. So you can see that it's already, it has to start also in the direct environment of people. But also more than that, we have to start looking outside our volunteering bubble. So I think everybody who is involved in volunteering is aware of this fact, how valuable it is, but we also have to reach to the employment sector, and we have to reach policy makers to come to this legal recognition. And I would be really happy to discuss a bit further, but it's a bit lacking time. But maybe just to already announce that there will be a symposium focusing on recognition of European youth volunteering and validation of skills in November, taking place in Ireland. And this will be the time where we really go into details on these topics and also how to bring the topic of recognition forward. And thank you, Domi, for already showing this International Volunteering Year that is hosted by the UN. So 2026, we are not only celebrating 30 years of European-funded youth volunteering, but we are also celebrating the UN International Volunteer Year. And so please feel free to check out the website and see if your country is also joining this initiative and what kind of activities are going on, and join, I would say, and really support this celebration and making volunteering visible.
Thank you. We have talked about 30 years of European youth volunteering programs in detail. So it's time for the last question, and that goes to all of you. What for you would be the most needed next steps for EU volunteering? So it seems that Barbara is starting.
Maybe I start.
If you are typing, just unmute yourself.
I think that the European Solidarity Corps volunteering, as it is now, is a great role model. It has super support structures with the mentoring, the trainings accompanying. That's all part of the learning journey, and I hope that continues. I also wish that the politics recognizes the power of European youth volunteering as a tool for so many topics. We mentioned them all today, to support mental health in general, fighting loneliness, securing a peaceful together in our societies. Especially now we also have the possibility to do volunteering with the neighboring partner regions. That's also everything contributes to this peace we have, and hopefully have more in Europe. It supports skill development outside of formal education, and that's very inclusive. Everyone can volunteer. It's not, you don't need a profession or certain skills. So I hope politics recognizes that. And if I have a third wish, if I can, Tommy, since it's a birthday party, let's say so, I hope that also the solidarity projects, which we haven't talked so much today, they are local volunteering initiatives, and it's fantastic what young people do for society. And there is an exhibition on the European Youth Portal, 3 Decades of Solidarity, and you can really explore these heartwarming stories. And if you think that young people are lazy, not contributing to society, you will change your mind after reading that, because that gives really hope back. So these are the wishes and next steps I would hope for. Christina, shall I hand over to you?
Well, before you do, I mean, we talked about hero's journey, and in these stories about heroes, you always get free wishes, so that's perfectly fine. So the ball was thrown to Christina. What about you? What would be the next steps for you?
Thank you. Yeah, I have to say, maybe just a bit shorter, that I would love to see this solidarity component in the core of youth volunteering, while not losing this balance of solidarity, having an effect on local community, tackling societal challenges, and having this youth inspired initiatives, which, as we saw, was already the idea in the pilot phase of the EVS. And to create this common good together. So I would really love to see this, while not losing this learning aspect within the whole volunteering experience, of course. And I can just underline what Barbara said, and I would love to see that the value of volunteering is recognized on societal and on political level.
Now, I share Barbara's and Christina's wishes. And I'll add one additional very concrete one, which comes from an example of how volunteering works here in Germany, where we are based, where volunteers can actually use a year of volunteering as an educational bridge. So say they have left school after 11th or 12th grade without full A-levels, which doesn't give them the right to study at a university, they can use a volunteering year to complete their education and then gain the right to study, which is a really cool thing that many young people use it for, and many early school dropouts use it for, to sort of bend their educational pathway a little bit. And I really, really like that, because it brings a very different kind of young person into volunteering. It opens up volunteering as an educational pathway to young people who don't typically consider this maybe as something for them. And I like that little elegant tweak to volunteering, which has turned out to be very, very powerful, and wish it would become a European-wide instrument.
So, Christine, Barbara, Andreas, thank you for sharing your views on 30 years of EU youth volunteering programs. And a big thank you also to the audience for joining our second Youth Research Dialogue in 2026.
Yeah, and thank you from my side as well. And we have good news. If you want to rewatch this stream or share it with colleagues, it's available on our YouTube, but also Facebook channel.
Yay, and finally you can see me. I hope you can also hear me. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thanks to all of you, to the great team, Tommy and Tomoga, but also to Barbara, Christine, and of course Andreas. We never have enough time to discuss these topics, but maybe one of the topics, for example, Christina mentioned recognition, can be one of the future topics of the Youth Research Dialogues. And that brings me to the next Youth Research Dialogue, which is actually in September. So we have a bit of break, but you will not miss us, because we will be very active on social media, and we will also publish findings from our monitoring service. So we hope to see you in September then, and take care and see you soon.